I don't know if it ever goes away, but it seems to me that within our popular culture, there's a bit of interest resurging about the nature of life after death and the resurrection. A popular book came out 2 years ago about whether or not heaven really exists by a doctor, of all people, who died, by all accounts, and had an experience of heaven. If I'm not mistaken, I haven't seen it, but there's a television series, Resurrection, right? Maybe some of you have seen it. I see a couple heads nodding. And it recounts these stories of people returning from the dead. But I must say, I don't think you need to physically die to come back from the dead in order to understand the power of resurrection and the possibility of new life within our own lives. Now, I'm going to take a page out of Monsignor Neal's playbook, and I'm going to refer to a movie here. But I must admit, it's a movie I bet most of you haven't seen, and if I'm honest with you, I wouldn't bring my mom. How many of you saw the Dallas Buyers Club? Raise your hands. Okay, just a few of you. It's an Academy Award-winning film for Best Actor. Matthew McConaughey was extraordinary. But I'm not necessarily going to recommend it because it is a bit, hard to watch. I'm going to recount to you what I think are the key elements of the story. Now, those of you who were nodding, do you see where I'm going with this in relating it to the story of Lazarus? Those of you who raised your hands? Okay, a couple of you. When the movie opens, it's 1985. Ron Woodruff is, a Dallas cowboy, not a football player. He's a rodeo rider, an electrician. He is a rough, around-the-edges character. He lives a wild way. He's a drug abuser. He uses cocaine. He's a hard-drinking man. He's a bigot, a racist, and homophobic. And he lives on the wild side. He's a hustler, gambler, and constantly rubbing the law. But he has an accident. And after the accident, when he's hospitalized, it's made clear that he's got not only HIV, but he's got full-blown AIDS. And if you remember in 1985, we were just beginning to understand what the nature of this horrific disease is all about. He's horrified when he's given a prognosis of 30 days to live. 30 days. He spends the first couple of those days in pretty self-destructive behavior, basically doing just what he's been doing, trying to drown himself maybe. But something catches his eye as he sees that calendar and those 30 days he has left. And it really catalyzes him into action. He heads straight to the library. He starts to do research on the nature of this disease and how to treat it. And he realizes that he can go to the hospital and participate in a drug trial if he's going to be accepted for it to try out AZT. He's not accepted. He feels shut off by the system. He has no idea how he's going to take care of himself. He hears that there's a way of getting the drugs needed by going to Mexico. It's a cocktail of vitamins and proteins as well as AZT and other things. He goes to Mexico and realizes that he can begin to purchase these things for himself, but there's also a potential profit to be made by sharing them across the border with others in his same shoes. And he begins to do this. Now, there is a process of conversion that Ron Woodruff experiences, but it takes a long time. And what we see is a man who's emaciated and looks like he's living death itself. And the way he treats people is just not only obnoxious, but fairly hateful. He comes across a person, a transgendered woman, by the name of Rayon, a nickname. And Rayon is also HIV positive and has a great relationship with the community there, the gay community in Dallas. He realizes that if he could make this relationship with Rayon, he's going to be able to expand his business. And I'm not glorifying this. He's simply thinking in practical terms. They tolerate each other. But Rayon, in some ways, she really pokes all his buttons, and he reacts. And the two of them, barely tolerating each other as they begin, within time, they began to experience a common humanity. They begin to see through their prejudices and biases, their hate, and they begin to see the human being just struggling to live in the other person. It's amazing to watch this transformation because as that transformation is taking place, that man, Ron Woodruff, who was like a living death, right, morally and socially, begins to come to life. He begins to see past his own self-interest. And at one point, when this buyer's club for the HIV protocols and drugs necessary for the treatment is jeopardized, he actually begins to give it away because he cares about this community. Not only that, Rayon, who is not able to knock her drug addiction, she finally succumbs, and just before the end, she sells her life insurance policy and gives all the money over to the Buyers Club to continue this outreach to the community. When Ron returns from Mexico from one of his drug buys, he's horrified to learn she's died. It's a heartbreaking scene in the movie because what's revealed is that these two people have finally seen each other soul to soul and realized there's no room for hatred or judgment or prejudice. It's simply one human being loving another. Her death, I think, inspires him to go all out for that community. And by the end of the movie, there's some predictable things about it. He is a changed man. He is a man who was living death and found life, and relationship and compassion for others. And it gave him a new lease on what life was all about. When we reflect on the story of Lazarus, there are so many ways that each of us and the people around us might be experiencing death. When we are locked in anger with others and have long, bitter grudges that we don't let go of, we are slowly dying, right? When we are struggling with addictions and not able to make other people our priority in life, and the addictions are so many these days, right? It's not only drugs and alcohol, it could be shopping, it could be the internet, right? Anything that gets in the way of our really loving one another and God. These are addictions, and they enslave people, and they lead us into a kind of slow death. If we're working away at jobs that are meaningless, right, and that we just feel somehow like each day is a burden to us, we're dying inside. What God calls us to, this one who raises Christ to life, is a call for each of us to live the fullness of life, to heal and be liberated from past hurts and traumas, to be freed from addictions so that we can be free for relationship and intimacy and creativity, to be healed and reconciled from relationships that have been disrupted or broken in the past so that we can be part of community and relationship and family once more. If we fear that we don't have what it takes to restore ourselves to life, we trust the one who raised Jesus to life, the one who is full of redemption and mercy, who loves us and whose love will never die. As we consider our own lives this Lent and the places where we might have deadness or dying within us, pay attention and invite God's grace in to renew those places, just like that earth outside, which is saturated with old snow and just cold, is going to come back to life over these next couple weeks, so that our hearts are bursting with crocuses and daffodils, right, and new life. It's going to happen, no matter how unlikely this winter has made it seem. Spring is coming, right? And spring is coming for our own hearts. Let this Lent be a pathway into greater life.